Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories podcast. I'm your host, John DeLynn. It is July 11th, 2017, and I am so excited to also welcome my brilliant co-host.
Thank you, babe. Margi here. Nice to see you all.
Let me mute Facebook because Facebook is making noise. Okay, go ahead. Introduce yourself, Margi.
Margi. Nice to see you all.
Great to see you.
Mm-hmm.
And we are very delighted to have you guys joining us today on Facebook Live. We have several distinguished guests with us, but before we introduce them, we'll welcome all our live participants on Facebook Live, and we'll just do a quick few announcements really quick. We got some feedback that people want the announcements to be briefer, so we'll dive right in. In the Open Stories Foundation, we're committed to supporting people who are affected by religious transition, and we've created workshops and events and retreats to support people. They're amazing events. Dan Witherspoon, Natasha Helfer Parker are holding a Mormon Matters retreat July 14th through 16th in Salt Lake City. Go to mormonmatters.org if you want to participate in that event. It's this weekend. We have, with Julie D'Azevedo-Hanks, a mixed faith marriage retreat. We have I think we have at least 10 couples, maybe 20 couples, a lot of couples who are joining us. We can use a few more. So August 11th through 12th, if you want to join me and Julie D'Azevedo-Hanks to talk about mixed faith marriages, it's going to be an excellent retreat. September 14th to 15th, we'll be in Seattle. October 20th through 22nd, we'll be in Sydney, Australia. And Carol Lynn Pearson, you'll be delighted to know, hopefully, that we'll be in the Bay Area November 9th through 10th. And we're excited to bring one of our workshops and retreats to you guys. If any of you want to host a Mormon Stories workshop or retreat in 2018, we're taking nominations now. So please email us at mormonstories@gmail.com and tell us what we're looking for is a city that'll have a critical mass of 20 to 40 or more participants. And if you're interested, please email us. We'd love to have you. And of course, we're doing a cruise, our first ever Mormon Stories cruise to the Bahamas in fall of 2018. That's October 24th through 28th. Upcoming topics for this portion of Mormon Stories. Margi and I are going to be covering conscious parenting soon. So parenting children after a faith transition. We're going to be talking about women recreating their lives after going through a faith transition. And we're going to be doing a series on Mormon Stories about apologetics, sort of Terrell Givens, that sort of apologetics, Fair Farms, etc. So please tune in and reach out if you have ideas or suggestions on all that. It is now time. I hope that was short enough. Was that short enough?
That was shorter. That was shorter.
Okay. All right.
We should feel good about that.
I hope our listeners like the brevity of those announcements. It's time for the weekly share that Margi and I do. So Margi, why don't you take it away?
Okay, so I have a deeper share this week that I thought I would give since Carol Lynn is joining us. I've actually told Carol Lynn this story kind of thing before. So I have a deeper share and then a lighter share. So I'll go ahead. Maybe I'll start with the deeper share of so Carol Lynn Pearson. Here's a book of poetry that I got a few years ago, maybe several years ago even, and read. And amidst my experience with my dad and caretaking with my dad, as he progressed with his Lewy body disease, he became less vocal at times where it would be difficult to communicate. Communication became more challenging. My dad was a lover of literature, a lover of poetry, and I would sit with this book and I would read him the poetry from the book. And I probably did this over a year, so there was a bit of decline from the beginning of the year when we started. He could actually read. Toward the end of the year, he could no longer read, but he would just weep. He would just cry as I would read the poem. So I just thought I would mention this book. The poetry is phenomenal, really lovely, along with that experience. So
The title of the book, for those who are listening, is In Love Again and Always, Love Poems by Carol Lynn Pearson. So check it out. It's worth it.
I love that story, Margi, and I put that story into my diary, how you would use those poems with that made me happy.
Oh, thank you. So a lighter share, I just like to share something that's bringing me joy. And this week, it's been something really simple. I think it tends to be, but it's been strawberries, fresh strawberries with melted whatever chocolate you have. And I just dip them in the chocolate. I stick them on a little plate, put them in the freezer for a few minutes for them to harden up a little bit. And you have like a great treat, and it's cold. It's been making me happy. So there you go. It's the little things, people.
Yay.
So
my weekly share is that Margie was starting to feel, and I was starting to feel, the whole family was starting to feel like my work was invading every aspect of our life, if I can be honest and candid. And so I made a deal with Margie that I would leave my cell phone in my office when I was done working, and that past 6 o'clock I wouldn't be on it. And in the morning, I wouldn't get on it until 8:30 when work began. So basically quarantining off the evenings and the mornings from work so that I could be more present with the family. How's it been going?
it's been beautiful. How do you feel like it's been?
I think I'm more conscious. I'm more connected. I'm more present, and I'm less irritated, and I enjoy my mornings and evenings more.
Brilliant. Way to go, babe.
So that's our share.
That's your share. I think you should do the other share too. The little pleasure to share. I'll talk about.
Oh, and Margie, I'll be a little vulnerable. Margie and I went to a life coach to just kind of talk about, it's been a rough year. So we went to a coach who does couples counseling today, and it was a really good experience. And it's a little bit weird for a therapist to go to a therapist, so to speak. I mean, I have 6 years training in psychology, and I help people in their marriages. And here we are deciding that we wanted to go to one too.
It's
and
really weird, or it's really healthy.
probably healthy. Probably healthy. Jana's laughing at me. Jana Spangler's the coach too. But anyway, we went to a coach, and it was really great. But you wanted me to talk about after we went to Del Taco. And I had an amazingly yummy meal. I had 2 fish tacos and beans and rice.
He was beaming.
Little
like
chips
the
and
pleasure
salsa.
was just off the charts for you. It was like the
And
perfect.
we enjoyed Del Taco. So that's my share.
Yeah, we're just making it real. We're bringing it down.
All right.
Anyway.
So that's our share. So we're very excited to begin this episode.
Yes.
I haven't really vetted this title with our panelists. Originally, it was titled Middle Way Mormonism, but I don't think people really know what that means. So I changed the title to call it Progressive Mormonism, but I actually didn't check with Carol Lynn Pearson, Jana Riess, or Jana Spangler to even see if they liked being called Progressive Mormons. So we're going to talk about that. But basically, we've been talking about on Mormon Stories for the past several weeks, staying in the LDS Church as a semi-believer, progressive, non-member believer, non-believing, I don't know, participant. We had the Thoughtful Faith panel on. We've had we interviewed Derek Clements. We've done some great stuff there, but we thought it would be fabulous to have on a few more panelists to talk about how to stay constructively engaged in Mormonism as a unorthodox or unorthodox participant. And so for our panel today, we have 3 people: Carol Lynn Pearson, Jana Riess, and Jana Spangler. The first 2 have been on Mormon Stories before, and Jana Spangler, I think this is your first time. So Carol Lynn, because you're the pioneer amongst us, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself to the guests who don't know who you are? Welcome to Mormon Stories. Welcome back.
Well, thanks, John, and great to be with you too, Margi. And I really appreciate seeing you as a couple interact. It's really lovely. So, a brief introduction to me. Yes, I am. I expect the older of the group here, And I am deeply rooted in Mormonism, and I expect to stay that way until I die. And then who knows what will happen after we're dead. I have become known as a writer and one who life has called to address interesting issues. Most people who know of me have heard of, I guess, my signature piece, the book that I wrote about my life with my husband called Goodbye, I Love You. And so those issues around homosexuality and the women's issues into which I was born have been the focus of what you would call my progressive Mormonism. And I'm fine with the word progressive. I think we should make progress. And of course, just change doesn't mean progress, but I certainly am committed to being progressive.
Well, it's such a pleasure to have you back. Thank you for joining us, Carol Lynn.
Thank you.
For those of you who haven't checked out her interview on Mormon Stories, it's like 5 hours long and it's epic. It's definitely worth checking out, and we're glad to have you. Jana Riess, we have your book here as well, or at least one of them.
Props.
It's called Flunking Sainthood. We had you on Mormon Stories to talk about the book. Flunking Sainthood, a year of breaking the Sabbath, forgetting to pray, and still loving my neighbor. Dr. Jana Riess. Jana, why don't you tell our listeners a bit about yourself, if you don't mind?
Well, thanks for having me on the show. It's great to be back. Although, as I have told you privately, I was not thrilled that you've moved to video because I had to get out of my pajamas, which sucks. But, so here we all are. I think the best way to say, I have no problems with the word progressive applied to myself unless it's about getting rid of the Oxford comma, in which case I would tell you there is no freaking way that I'm progressive. So it's good that we are progressive on some things and maybe we're very traditional about other things. In terms of the church, I am a believing Mormon. I'm an active Mormon. I am constantly negotiating, which I think is what we're here to talk about, how that belief and practice will play out in my daily life. And I'm a convert to the church. I converted when I was about 23 years old, and I'm the only Mormon in my family. So we also have sort of the interfaith family dynamic to work out. What else? I'm a writer. You've talked about one of my books, and I guess relevant to your audience is that I'm working on a book now called The Next Mormons, The Rising Generation of Latter-day Saints, which is based on social science research into 4 generations of Mormons and trying to determine, is change happening in the LDS Church among current Mormons? If we also sampled former Mormons to try to find out why they left and some of what characterizes their lives now after Mormonism. So if any of that comes up, I'm always happy to talk about it.
Love it.
Interesting.
And don't you have a graduate degree from Columbia, is that right?
I do. I have a doctorate in the history of religion in the United States.
Yeah. Well, welcome back, Jana Riess. It's a delight to have you as always. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. And it's so great to not be the only Jana. So this is new.
Yeah, we've got the Janas today. Jana Spangler, welcome for the first time to Mormon Stories. It's great to have you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So tell us just a bit about yourself.
Okay, so I was born and raised in the church. And I would say that my upbringing wasn't terribly strict, but it was very consistent. And I probably started kind of questioning things, probably over the last 3.5 years. And 3 years ago, I had a pretty hard shelf crash. So I've been dealing with things since then, trying to figure out what my path is, and it changes regularly. This is definitely not a path you stay still on. So what I say today and how I feel today could be different a month from now. But I'm a life coach with Symmetry Solutions, and I'm really enjoying my work there. And I don't know what else.
All right.
That's perfect.
That's great.
Yeah.
We'll check in. We want to encourage our live listeners. We have 63 live listeners right now. Want to welcome them all. Lisa writes Jana Spangler with 3 exclamation points. Jara Lee says, I love and adore these women. Shout out to Jara Lee, who actually helped put this panel together. Jara Lee, we love you, and we're grateful for your help with this and many other things. Carol Lynn Pearson, you'll be interested to hear that Sandy writes, Carol Lynn, I've read your poetry since I was a teenager and some of your books. Goodbye, I Love You was amazing. I lost one of my best friends to AIDS years ago, and it touched me deeply. Carol Lynn, really quick, plug your newest book, just really quick.
Oh, really quick. My newest book is called The Ghost of Eternal Polygamy, Haunting the Hearts and Heaven of Mormon Women and Men. And I think in some ways it is maybe the most important book that I have put out there. I'm very thrilled at how this book has turned out and how it's being received.
Yeah, check it out. And Carolyn, I have no idea why I haven't interviewed you about that book. I don't know if it's my fault or yours, but there needs to be some reconciliation there, atonement or something.
Okay, we can talk, John.
All right. Okay, so let's jump into this interview. Let's go back around the horn and have each of you briefly discuss what was it that made your faith become maybe more complex. And it's hard to do in a minute or two, but Carolyn, we'll start with you. You've probably already referenced it a bit, but what would you say the defining moments were in your life where your faith all of a sudden went from orthodox to unorthodox?
Well, there was really no really specific time. I do give a good history of this in the book that we just mentioned, The Ghost of Eternal Polygamy. I was born into women's issues. I just was. And that meant that I looked around from the get-go and said, wait, what's wrong with this picture? Why is it that is it obvious that my femaleness is second in value to the maleness of the boys that I'm going to school with? And so all of that was right in the forefront of my awareness. And then, of course, when I learned about polygamy, and when my seminary teacher bore us his testimony that this is a divine principle, and that we young women, though we're selfish now, we will lose that and be thrilled to be able to live that principle and so on. And that's the way God lives. Those things all landed in my mind and were very, very troublesome to me. The major point that I can look back on and understand, well, the way I describe it in this new book is that when heaven has an earthquake, you kneel and feel around for the broken pieces of God. And that is how I felt after I learned that my marriage to my husband was not what either one of us had anticipated, that he would be cured by being righteous, cured from being gay, from being all the righteous things that he was doing. When that did not happen, and when all of my ongoing questioning about the obvious second-class citizenship of femaleness in the church from God on down, when those things all came together and it just pretty much exploded, and I really did kneel and pick up all of the broken pieces of my whole world, including the church, including God, examined everyone carefully and decided which ones felt godly that I would keep to construct a new concept of the divine and a new concept of the church that I felt I could maintain with more on my own terms than I had before. So that was a very major time for me then.
All right, that all makes sense. And for those who really want to hear about Carol Lynn's pioneering work in women's issues, including Mother of the Morning, including My Turn on Earth, including Goodbye, I Love You, and many, many other things, again, check out her podcast, my podcast with her. Jana Riess, I'm not sure how much this question applies to you, because I get the sense that you sort of came to Mormonism as a convert, with some progressiveness or complexity in your faith. Is that true?
Yeah, I came on board with a subscription to Sunstone and Dialogue already back in 1993. So I had both eyes open. And when I was studying to be a pastor, so I was a student in a theological seminary when I became a Mormon, which is a little weird, admittedly. But I remember sitting in the stacks on the floor at Firestone Library at Princeton University and just pulling down, bound groups of dialogue issues and reading them. And that was, for me, one of the most formative introductions to the faith, because I had had a conversion experience to the Book of Mormon. I had had a conversion experience to several key aspects of Mormon theology. But it was very important for me, if I was going to be changing my life in this really molecular way, to know that I was not going to be required to check my brain at the door, and that I would be in a company, a fellowship of other thinking and believing people. So I did make the decision to be baptized. Oddly, my baptism actually happened in September of 1993, which was not a great month for feminists and intellectuals in the church, or wannabe intellectuals, pseudo-intellectuals, as Boyd K. Packer put it. So that was a very inauspicious time to be a progressive Latter-day Saint, and I was aware of what was going on because I was reading about it in the New York Times. And so I knew that as I went into the water, and I felt almost a sense of resistance in feeling, I have a testimony, I have a love of this church and a love of this gospel, but I apparently am not the sort of convert they want. I am not the droid they're looking for. And that's hurtful, And so as I was going in the water, I was thinking, they're going to have to kick me out if they want me to leave this church, because I'm not leaving on my own. And I still feel that way.
I can relate to those feelings.
Sorry, right. I didn't mean to put it so baldly, John. I wasn't actually being very sensitive.
No, I loved it.
Sorry.
No,
okay.
I'm relating. That's good. Thank you, Jana.
Yeah.
We'll have a follow-up. Thank you, Jana Riess. Beautiful, both of you, and Carol Lynn. Okay, Jana Spangler, how about you? When did your faith get complex? What happened?
Okay, so for me, over the past 6 years or so, I've been doing a lot of personal development. And so I got really interested in people like Brene Brown and a host of others. And I started watching Oprah's Super Soul Sunday, which is still one of my favorite shows. And I just got really influenced by so many of the people that she interviews. And so people like Richard Rohr.
Okay, Jana.
And Thich Nhat Hanh. And
Jana, repeat. You froze up for a second.
Okay. Oh, sorry about that.
We heard Richard Rohr. Just go back through the list.
Okay, so Richard Rohr, Thich Nhat Hanh, Rob Bell, a million others. I can't even name them all, but it was so influential on me, and I felt what I would say just a deep spiritual connection to these people and a deep truth in what I was hearing, and it was so much more influential to me than what was happening at church. And at some point, I started going, why am I not getting that same fulfillment as I listen to General Conference? Why is this not filling me in the same way? If we have the truth, why is it not feeling right to me? And it was really confusing. And in the midst of that, I think I was just having a hard time. I was feeling a little depressed, reaching out to God, trying to feel like, because that's where I'm supposed to go to get comfort, is God. And yet I'm not feeling him, and started questioning if I'd ever felt him, and started questioning everything. And the first time I opened my mouth to a few people that I knew to discuss that, those conversations did not go well. And as very faithful people that I looked up to spoke to me and could not even make an allowance for the experience I was going through, I think in that moment is when my shelf crashed. And I thought, something is wrong with this when I can't be honest and have that be honored. And so I think almost overnight, I went from thinking I knew everything to feeling like I knew nothing. And it was very disorienting. And I really relate to what Carol Lynn said about picking up the pieces. I feel like that has been my process. When I read Ghost of Eternal Polygamy, that really resonated with me, because I feel like that's what I've done. And I was just determined not to pick up anything that I didn't really authentically connect to. So I've been on that journey ever since.
Carol Lynn Pearson, do you have a label that you use to describe your type of Mormonism, or do you eschew labels?
No, I don't. I'm I really don't try. I try not to label myself as this or that or the other. I'm maybe just a weird Mormon to some people. I'm kind of a conundrum, I think, to a variety of people who think, how's she been able to get away with all the things that she's done? But I have an interesting path, and I have been not only allowed my interesting path, but I have been welcomed on my interesting path. And I've never pretended to be anything other than who I am and what I really feel. And of course, I've been blessed to have geographically, this may sound strange to a lot of people, but I've always felt that my ward really loves me and that my stake really loves me. In fact, a few years ago, I remember I was standing in the foyer, and my bishop and stake president just happened to be there together. And I walked up to them both and I said, "Gentlemen, because I can see you right together here, I want to take the occasion to thank the both of you again for the generosity that you have expressed toward me, being such a strange but really good part of the ward and the state. I want to thank you for not just tolerating me, but for, I think, appreciating me." And at that moment, my then stake president said, "Carol Lynn, I wish I could clone you." Now, I wish that all weird Mormons or progressive Mormons, or whatever you want to call them, would be able to find a congregation with enough regular, ordinary people in it that maybe, though they don't believe everything you do, or maybe they're really kind of alarmed at certain things, still feel very much to embrace you as I have felt embraced, even by the people in my own ward that I know have a variety of points of view on issues that are important to me. So that's one thing that I wish everyone could have, is this leadership that I have experienced as being so really fun and generous to me.
Mm-hmm.
Elder Holland once told me and my brother he wished that he could clone us as well. So
Okay.
I was told that once too. Didn't worked out a little bit differently, but
Easy there.
no, but I think we should have thousands of Carol Lynn Pearsons in the church. I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
So Carol Lynn, I'm going to just follow up, and then Jana Riess, you're next. So when somebody says, are you Mormon, or what religion are you? For me, when I was active, I had a hard time just saying, "Yep, I'm a Mormon," partly because of the church's stance on women, LGBT people, people of color. I didn't feel comfortable not adding some qualifier, because otherwise I would have felt embarrassed and or concerned that they would then assume that I was a bigot. And so I'm just wondering how you deal with that type of concern in your own willingness to own your Mormon label, in spite of all the baggage it probably comes with by certain groups of people, or most of the world.
Yeah, well, I've been able to do that, John, without a lot of angst. And I'm remembering, especially when I was going out performing my play, Mother Will of the Morning, which I did over 300 times. And the publicity may have indicated that I was a Mormon, but always then, or since then, or prior to then, when people found out or inquired about my religion, I would say, yes, I belong to the Mormon Church. And I'm comfortable leaving it at that unless somebody wants to say, wow, okay, what about this or that? And then I'm very, very open that I am also an activist within my community on issues that are important to me. So I just take that as it happens to be there. And I'm myself with all of my history and my present and the things that I'm working on. And somehow it just works out.
Beautiful. Jana Riess, how do you handle that question? What religion are you, or are you Mormon?
I'm 47 years old. I just say I'm a Mormon. I mean, there's a really interesting passage in one of Lauren Winner's books after she's converted from Orthodox Judaism to Anglican Christianity. And well, at that point she was more evangelical. And she was asked, are you a Christian? And she was battling with the same phenomenon. I want them to know that I'm a Christian, but I wear fishnet stockings. Or I want them to know that I'm a Christian, but I read books and, travel the world, whatever it is. I think you become more comfortable in your core identities, and Mormonism is one of my core identities. Maybe because I'm constantly expressing my views online as a blogger, I don't feel the need to talk about it when I'm introduced to people. I don't feel the need to qualify Mormon with something else. But perhaps if I weren't a writer, I would feel that need. I don't know.
It's an interesting point.
Love it. All right. So two proud self-described Mormons. Jana Spangler, let's see if you fill out the trifecta or not.
Yeah, I think I have not been doing this as long as these two ladies, and I hope to be much more comfortable in that someday. I so often, I don't even know what to say when people ask. At the core of it, yes, of course I'm Mormon. But I guess I do feel like certain assumptions are made of me just given that label. And so I do feel like I want to qualify that in some way. And I never know quite how to do that. It really is difficult, and it depends on who I'm speaking with. But yeah, I mean, I identify with so many of the different labels that people use. I identify with progressive. I identify with, I don't know, probably agnostic is a good one for me. I've been hanging out with Thomas McConkie a lot and learning a lot about mindfulness meditation. I understand he's been referred to as the Budeo-Mormon, and I kind of like that. I'm kind of trying that one on for size. That's definitely part of me. But, it really just depends on who I'm speaking to and how much they know about it. And it's actually sparked a lot of really interesting conversations with people when I do start to kind of qualify it a little bit. And then we can go a little deeper, and they'll ask questions, and it's led to some really good conversation.
Beautiful.
I'm curious for each of you what some of the most valuable aspects of your faith are for you. Sort of those deep wells, those deep sort of connections that fulfill you and literally fill you up. I'd just love to hear what they are for you. So we could start with, how about we start with Jana Riess?
When I was meeting with the missionaries long, long ago, I remember praying with them at one point and then feeling the love of God in a way that I hadn't felt it before, which was kind of ridiculous because when I was 14, I became a Presbyterian, and then I kind of became involved with evangelicalism. I had had a lot of experiences of God's character and learning about God. And so I've puzzled over this. Why was I having that particular experience of this overwhelming love in a Mormon context when I hadn't had it necessarily in that same way before? I don't have a good answer for that. But I do feel that there is something tangible about the way that Mormons understand the love of God. And part of it has to do with this blissful theology that we have about the material world and the body, that we are embodied spirits, that we have this goodness innately, which is somewhat different from the core of the Western classical Christian tradition. So those are things that I cherish about Mormonism. And I wish that they were things that were emphasized more when we talk about our faith, rather than so many of the things that are emphasized now have to do with a very particular definition of the family, or with very particular kinds of behaviors that have come to characterize Mormonism in the late 20th and early 21st centuries that were not necessarily part of Mormonism in its own classical expression. You know, I love our theology, and I wish we talked about it more.
Mm-hmm. Nice. How about you, Carol Lynn?
The thing that I maybe value above all is a hands-on community that is truly trying to create Zion. And I know there are lots and lots of holes in that, and lots and lots of stumbles in the way that is happening. But I happen to truly love the Mormon community. Mm-hmm. And I honestly believe that you're not going to find a group of people anywhere who are trying harder to actually be good people and to make the world better and to help one another out. And I love the unique, well, there may be other communities that can do this, but the immediate availability of help and kindness and love when you need it is to me quite remarkable. And not only to know that all of that is available to you when you find that you are in very desperate need of that, but to know that you are on call all the time. When if something comes up, that somebody needs you. And you know, I'm sort of a visiting teacher at large, and I have been called on because of my specialties by a state president or by a bishop to say, okay, this one has your name on it. I want you to take it away. And I think it's wonderful to have that kind of availability in a community where there are so many people in this world who are really fine, excellent people, but don't have a ready-made network that can be there to bless them and to make a place where their own blessing can go out to whoever needs it. So my appreciation for Mormondom really does begin right here on the ground. And I could list a lot of the concepts, and the idea that we all of us have a divine destiny. I hold on to that, and that is a very strong, beautiful thing for me. I have to throw out of that basket a lot of things that often go along with that I will not accept. I'm really through with thinking about the 3 degrees of glory. And then the 3 degrees in the top degree. I think we've got a lot of misunderstanding about a lot of that, and a lot of unnecessary pain. And I have to do extra work around the idea that I'm here to become like God, because God is always offered to us in His maleness, and I have to constantly rewrite the script for myself. I have to constantly be brave enough in my own private prayers and occasionally with prayers of people who understand and trust me, that I will not approach God in any way that is not both mother and father together. And of course, Joseph gave us that hint, as have a lot of people throughout history. The idea of a divine feminine is certainly nothing unique to Mormonism. But I guess what I'm saying is that so many of the really clearly beautiful theological offerings of the church, I have to rewrite for myself as I experience them, because I'm not going to live in a concept where femaleness is secondary, or maleness is the center of the universe and femaleness hovers around that. I rewrite parts of Mormonism all the time in order to make it feel like the truth that Joseph said, we accept truth wherever it comes from. And so I feel free to do that in my own life.
Yeah. It sounds like Jana Riess, you were talking a bit about renegotiation, and Carol Lynn Pearson, you as well, renegotiating some of those things. Jana Spangler, how about you? Are there, what for you would you say are the most valuable aspects for you right now with regard to your faith, if any, that are standing out?
Yeah, it's probably a harder question for me. I mean, I really think I've been so deconstructing everything for so long that I'm more in the deconstruction than really appreciating phase. You know, I feel some of that coming back, but I think it takes time. But one of the things, in addition to, I mean, like Carol Lynn said, just having the opportunity to be around people who really are striving for something bigger than themselves and something better has been really a blessing to me that honestly I don't think I recognized until I went through a faith transition. I think I took that for granted completely my entire life. But I think the other thing that has been really alive for me lately is just the ability to learn from one another because of our lay ministry. Like, I think that is powerful in a way, again, I don't think I always appreciate it. That being said, it's also one of the most frustrating things for me. It is a double-edged sword because it can be super hard. But, you know, for the last 2 years, I've been able to serve as a Relief Society instructor. And I have just really appreciated it, as hard as it's been at times. I have really appreciated the opportunity to read through those lessons and figure out what I could actually teach that would be authentic. And it's given me such an amazing opportunity. I don't know that I would have had it anywhere else to really dig deep and think about those things and think, how can I teach this authentically, but also how can I also be sensitive to people who are not in the same place that I have. It's given me such a unique opportunity to learn to be sensitive to everybody, because I recognize that when I go in there to teach Relief Society, everyone is there to have an edifying experience. They are not there, you know, to have everything challenged. I think a little bit of that is good. You know, I love the phrase that Christianity is there to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. So I feel good afflicting the comfortable a little bit, but you know, I've gotten it wrong over the last few years doing that, but I've learned so much. I've learned so much about trying to include everybody in that experience. So I just think that the lay ministry is really, really powerful.
Yeah, really good points in there.
Love it. Okay, so we've talked a bit about some of the things that you guys love most about the church. I guess one trailing question I have, and Jana, we'll ask you first, and then we'll do Carol Lynn, then Jana Riess, Jana Spangler. When things were really tough, in addition to what you've said, what kept you desiring to actually remain engaged with the church when so many people in the 21st century seem to be choosing to leave? And Jana Riess, you can tell us if there's a increasing or just a flat or no trend in that regard. But Jana Spangler, you go first. So far, other than what you've already shared, what's kept you from just leaving altogether?
So a couple of things. I think that, first of all, I have a believing husband and children that are, happy for the most part in their activity, and it's important to their, living in Utah. It's important to their social structure and all kinds of things. So I'm very sensitive to that. I didn't want to make any big moves. Second of all, I do think, I'll be honest, there's this lingering thing in the back of my head of your salvation is at stake. So tread carefully. I mean, there is a bit of fear that is driving that as well. I'll be totally honest. And I really have felt like, until I feel called out, this is probably as good a place as any for me. And I've learned so much through the difficulty and the heartache that I feel like it's still valuable to me. It's still valuable to me.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've had to learn to do is not look to the church and going in church attendance as being the thing that is going to spiritually fulfill me. I can't go there looking to, what am I going to get out of this? Mm-hmm. I've had to shift to, what do I have to give? What do I have to give to this community? Who can I help by being here? And what do I have to add? And I have had the privilege of good leadership as well that has been understanding of where I am. They've been open. I don't know if I would have been able to do this with some of the stories that I hear out there of leadership and how people are treated. Mm-hmm. I have truly had the privilege of people who don't fully understand me, but really care. And that's everything.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. So I haven't had some big move to feel like now's the time, get out. Not yet.
Yeah.
Excellent. Carol Lynn, were you ever tempted to just kind of give up? And if so, what's kept you going?
Well, there was one time that I went inactive for 9 months. And that was directly after Proposition 8 was passed. And I spoke to my state president and I said, I can't find my way to the chapel anymore. I can't. When so many people that I am so sincerely and publicly committed to are disinvited from the table, I can't sit down at the table. And he did not try to dissuade me. We had, that entire state president and I, state presidency and I, had spent a long time going back and forth about what was going on leading up to Prop 8, and they relied on me a lot. And we had a wonderful, and continued to have a wonderful relationship. And so at the end of that conversation, I said to him, if you decide that you want to do something important to bless the lives of the gay people and their families in our state, I will come back and I will help you do it. And he said, that's an interesting idea. So anyway, we continued to email those three absolutely fabulously splendid men and me, and I gave them many ideas of what they might do to start some healing in our state. And 9 months later, one of them contacted me and said, Carolyn, we are ready to act on some of the good ideas you've been giving us, and will you meet with us? Which I did. And they had already decided they were going to go into all of their wards and give a presentation on better understanding and loving our gay brothers and sisters. And so I became, and they asked me to be involved in helping them make that happen, right? And so I did. And I jumped back in. I went back to church the next Sunday. I was welcomed with open arms. My ward still loved me. I was asked to teach a relief society lesson a couple of weeks after that. So that was my one experience in totally dropping out. Now, the larger picture on all of that is that I feel very deeply that that I have been planted in Mormondom for some very good reasons. And I believe that one should grow where one is planted, if it is a good place to grow. And I know a lot of people who have left because this was not a good place to go. For me, I see tremendous opportunity that this church in the teachings and in the community have given to me. And so I really feel called to stay. And another thing that's very important to me is that from that strange time when my little book of poems beginnings kind of put me on the map in Mormondom, I began to hear from women all over the church. And they said to me, Sister Pearson, you have a voice and I don't have a voice. Please. And so they would give me their stories and want me to know their stories and do what I could about their stories. And so I realized that I had become very important to a lot of, especially Mormon women. And gradually, as I wrote more, and as I was continued to be accepted in the church, I developed a platform that was to me very valuable, where my voice was listened to. And I honored that, and I tried to respect the respect that had been given me through that. So, and John, you might remember, you and I were both on Why I Stay, the panel about 4 years ago. And I remember that you were right in the middle of some very evident anguish. And the main thing that I said then, that I still believe, is that my theology has truly come down to God is love. And wherever you see love, there you see God, as we sing in the little song, where love is, there God is also. And the truth is that even with all of the challenges and all of the stumblings that I personally have seen and continue to see, I do see an enormous amount of love in the Mormon church. And consequently, to me, that means there's an enormous amount of God happening there. And wherein I see places that to my observation, and it can only be to my observation because I can't see through anybody else's eyes, but wherein I see places, and I do see places, and I write about those places, where love is not, then I have an opportunity to try to bring some better love there, and consequently, perhaps bring more God and godliness to the organization. So that's kind of my rather complicated, but in a way, simple experience of the church. It has given me a lot, and I believe I have a platform where I can give a lot as well.
Beautiful.
Yep.
All right, Jana Riess, was there ever a time where you were just like wondering whether you could hang on, and what kept you going?
I took a break for about a year when I was in my early 30s, and it was a very helpful time. So it was a sabbatical. I think I might have coined the idea of the Mormon sabbatical. I don't know. I wrote about it not long after I had done it and talked about what a renewing time it was. The reason that I did the sabbatical was not so much because of doctrinal issues or questions that I was having about my faith, but really, and I think this is kind of often involved with Mormons, feeling burned out. I was in a rural ward in Kentucky where I was in the Relief Society presidency. The needs of the ward seemed overwhelming to me. We were kind of located on the outskirts of Appalachia, and we had a lot of poverty. We had just issues. We also had like the Hatfields and the McCoys in terms of Family Feud. That was really wildly entertaining. And after a while, I think for me, I just felt exhausted. And the feeling of being completely so depleted and tired, also as a relatively new mother at that time, that was definitely a factor, just being physically tired. It spilled over so that church was no longer a place where I felt safe or happy. Certainly, I just felt when I left entirely burned out and sad. And I thought, this is not good. Academics take leaves of absence or sabbatical years, and there is a strong biblical precedent for the need of a sabbatical. And I'm going to just do that and then see where I land at the end of it. And at the end of that year, I came back, and it was the end of August of 2001. So I had been back in the church just for a couple of weeks when September 11th happened. And one of the things that changed in my approach was, the next day had been feeling this incredibly deep sadness and grief over what had happened over September 11th, and a sense of dread about going to church the following Sunday. Like, what in the world, what batshit crazy thing is somebody going to say that's going to be so hurtful and awful? And instead of stewing about that and just worrying about that, I called the bishop and I said, I can't come to church if we're going to have a sermon on tithing. I can't come to church if we're going to just try to pretend that this didn't happen, or have business as usual, or emphasize something that just seems so trivial right now. And he said, this is kind of what Jana Spangler was talking about, basically, great, so you talk. There's that, volunteer ministry ethic at work in Mormonism. And so I did. I gave one of the talks that Sunday and felt more empowered by the experience of just simply voicing my concerns and frustrations. And I think that a lot of times that's what's needed. Mm-hmm. I've been lucky in the same way that Jana Spangler and Carol Lynn Pearson have talked about feeling kind of lucky in the Bishop Roulette issue, which is very real. And in some of the interviews that I've done for the Next Mormons book and some of the conversations that I've had personally, I've certainly heard stories in which people have not been so fortunate in their choices, or in their local leadership, stake presidents and bishops. I have either had local leaders who really understood me, or who at least tried to love me. I've never had a local leader that I felt in any way was out to get me, or felt threatened in that kind of way that sometimes men are threatened by women. I have not had that experience. I'm sure that it happens, but it hasn't been my experience. And I don't know how I would respond if I were in that situation, because Mormonism does not allow women a tremendous amount of institutional authority in which to complain when situations are potentially wrong or abusive. But I haven't had that myself.
Mm-hmm. So interesting. As I'm reflecting on what each of you said, there's a commonality, I feel like, in it, and that's one of empowerment, kind of, in a way, where you take something that's given, you kind of work with it, and you set it out again as your own. I feel like, Jana Spangler, you said that a bit when you were talking about reworking lessons, trying to go deeper, trying to identify something core that you really connected to, and then going back out and realizing, okay, I can offer that, and I also want to offer this space to be safe and giving to people who go there, with no, not wanting to be disrupted or to be, And Carol Lynn, I hear you saying that too, with your unique platform, serving as like this vehicle of women's stories, and that you take it back sort of to your ward. And I love that you would say, actually express a need. Like, if you could do this in the ward, if you could somehow provide something that would meet the LGBTQ plus, community in our ward, I would love to be part of that. That would be enough for me to feel like, I love that you know yourselves on some level there, to have this exchange. I think that's so key. And again, with you, Jana Riess, and how you sort of navigated exhaustion and really feeling fatigue. I know that's real. I mean, my family lived in West Virginia. And some of those branches, you literally have 3 or 4 people doing a ward's worth or a branch's worth of work. It's very, very tough. And being able to know yourself and say, you know what, I need a break to love this thing, to have this thing that I love, to have it not be wounded or taken or sort of morphed into something that, I value it enough to take a step away. So I love that about each of your stories. And I wonder how really necessary on a level it is for people to have that self-knowledge, and also to have that sort of relationship of, I can take these things and I can also empower myself wherever I am to reframe in a way with what I have to offer. So Anyway, beautiful.
Yes, I appreciate what you just said, Margi, and I feel that's true. And wouldn't it be great if more people felt I have the right to speak the things that are really important to me?
Mm-hmm.
I know that people have been squashed for doing that, but to speak powerfully and kindly at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
I think is exactly what is needed.
Yeah, brilliant.